I'm Lauren, 28, and my holiday homecoming shattered in a matter of seconds. The house was dark. Only the soft glow from the kitchen revealed Grandpa Walter, sitting alone with a sad-looking sandwich. Then I saw the note on the fridge, and everything changed. Used your savings for Ethan. Watch him this week. We're enjoying Cancun. Mom and Dad. $23,000, my entire student loan fund, gone. Grandpa's trembling. Hand reached for mine. "They'll regret this, sweetheart," he said quietly. I just smiled. 3 days later? They certainly did. But before I tell you how, where are you tuning in from? Hit subscribe and join me on this wild ride to justice. Financial responsibility wasn't something I was taught. It was something I was forced to learn. I was 16 when Dad lost his job, and Mom's part-time retail shifts barely paid for groceries. While my classmates were shopping for prom dresses, I was stocking shelves at Morgan's Grocery from 5 p.m. until midnight and delivering newspapers before school. Not because anyone made me. I just knew our family ship was sinking, and someone had to start bailing water. Ethan was 11 then, too young to work, but not too young to feel the tension. Mom always protected him, repeating her favorite line, "Ethan's sensitive. He needs normalcy." So while I was learning how to budget and go without, Ethan got to keep playing baseball and renewing his gaming subscriptions. I didn't resent it at the time. He was just a kid. By 19, I'd saved enough to start community college, nursing prerequisites. I worked as a hospital orderly, and every month I transferred $800 to an account Mom insisted on managing. "Banks prey on young people," she'd say. "We'll keep it safe until you need it for something important." After 4 years of deposits, I had $23,000 set aside. My future, earmarked to pay down my nursing school loans. Through all those years, Grandpa Walter, Mom's father, was my anchor. A retired mechanical engineer with worn hands and endless patience, he taught me how to change oil, fix leaks, and stand up for myself. "Backbone before wishbone," he'd say while helping me with homework at his kitchen table. Whenever my parents were busy, Dad's poker nights or Mom's wine club, Grandpa's humble ranch-style home became my haven. Ethan, meanwhile, drifted down a different road. At 14, his teachers started calling about missed assignments. At 16, he was caught with weed. By 18, he'd already been through 3 high schools, each exit following some disciplinary misunderstanding, as my parents liked to call it. Last Christmas, Ethan didn't even come downstairs until dinner. His eyes were bloodshot, his words mumbled. Mom still filled his plate first, like always. "He's just figuring things out," she'd explain. "College isn't for everyone." Meanwhile, Grandpa Walter's health was declining. Early Parkinson's, the doctor said. His hands had started trembling. My parents barely visited, even though they lived just 15 minutes away. When I offered to help him make his home more accessible, Mom changed the subject. "Did I tell you Ethan might go to community college next fall?" she'd say, redirecting the conversation. Despite it all, my career was thriving. Pediatric nursing fit me perfectly. Kids responded well to my calm approach. Parents appreciated my honesty. Just last month, I was offered a leadership role at Portland Children's Hospital. When the news came through on Zoom, I nearly cried. 2 Christmases ago, I arrived to find Grandpa Walter alone on December 25th, making a sad turkey sandwich. "Mom said you were coming for dinner," I told him, confused. I'd flown straight from the airport to his place. "They called this morning," he shrugged. "Ethan wasn't feeling well, so they postponed." But I saw the pain behind his calm expression. We drove over to my parents' house unannounced. Inside, the whole family was watching a Christmas movie, Ethan perfectly fine. Mom muttered something about not enough ham when she saw us, and Dad awkwardly made space on the couch. Later that night, as Grandpa and I sat on the porch swing, he squeezed my hand. "One day, Lauren, we'll both stand up for ourselves." When it really matters. I nodded, but I wasn't sure what that moment would look like. Now I knew. Standing in the same kitchen, reading that cold-hearted note while Grandpa struggled to chew a dry sandwich with trembling hands. It hit me. This was the moment. My carefully held composure cracked as I crumpled the note in my fist. 4 years of skipped vacations, double shifts, and cheap ramen, all evaporated for Ethan's latest crisis. I sank to the floor, back pressed to the fridge, sliding down until I hit the linoleum. "They've gone too far," I whispered, tears clouding the kitchen light. That money was for my loans. I trusted them. Grandpa Walter slowly lowered himself to the ground beside me, his knee popping in protest. His embrace was weaker than I remembered, his once strong frame diminished, but his voice still held the same calm strength. "Been eating sandwiches since Tuesday," he admitted. "Can't handle the stove. My hands shake too much." He showed me. His fingers trembled. Worse than the last time I saw him. "Didn't want to bother anyone," he added. I wiped my tears and looked around the kitchen with fresh eyes, dishes stacked in the sink, mail spilling off the counter, including final notice envelopes. The fridge had nothing but condiments, processed cheese, and a near-empty bread bag. No fresh food, no prepared meals. Not for an elderly man whose hands couldn't hold a pan. "Where's Ethan?" I asked suddenly, remembering I was supposedly here to watch him. Grandpa's face tightened. "Haven't seen him since yesterday morning. Came by to borrow $20 in my car. Said he'd be back in a few hours." He looked at his watch. That was 30 hours ago. I tried calling my parents, straight to voicemail. Both phones. No. Emergency contacts. Just a cheerful recording. "We're making memories in Cancun. Leave a message." Ethan's bedroom offered some disturbing answers. A brand new gaming system, pricey clothes, tags still on, and tucked in drawers, prescription bottles with no labels, razor blades on the nightstand, a small digital scale. The basement reeked of marijuana. Empty beer cans littered the floor around the couch, clearly where Ethan had been camping out. That was when the doorbell interrupted my growing inventory of neglect. Standing on the porch was Mrs. Carter, our neighbor, from next door. Concern was etched deep into her kind face beneath her tidy gray bob. "Thank goodness you're here, Lauren," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I've been worried sick about your grandfather." Her voice dropped. "And that brother of yours has been throwing some wild parties. Just 3 nights ago, I counted at least 15 cars up and down the street. I called your parents, but they said boys need to blow off steam." After she left, I called my best friend Rachel and unloaded everything between sobs. Her legal background kicked in immediately. "You need to check your credit report." "Now," she urged, "if they touched your student loan savings, they might have done more." My heart pounded as I pulled it up. No other accounts were touched, but the bank confirmed what I feared most. 6 months of steady withdrawals from my savings account, ending 3 days ago when the last of the $23,000 vanished. Each transaction had been authorized by Linda Mitchell, my mother. She still had joint access to the account since I was a teenager. That night, Grandpa Walter and I sat at the kitchen table with the only food in the house, peanut butter sandwiches and lukewarm tap water. "How will you manage your loans now?" he asked, worry deepening the creases in his face. I stared at my half-eaten sandwich, trying to keep it down. "I don't know," I whispered. "The deferment ends in February. And Ethan? Where even was he? What state would we find him in if we did?" As if sensing my thoughts, Grandpa reached across the table, his trembling hand covering mine. "We'll find him," he said gently. "But this time, things will be different." I nodded. Exhaustion and betrayal felt like stones in my chest. Tomorrow would bring searching, confrontation, and decisions I wasn't sure I was ready to make. But tonight, Grandpa needed a real dinner, And his medication. The pills. Where were his pills? I tore through the house, searching every drawer, cabinet, and counter. Nothing. No prescriptions. No pill organizers. Just another glaring example of how far things had slipped. Ethan. Grandpa sighed when I asked. He said he'd picked them up yesterday. Never came back. I glanced at the clock. 11:42 p.m. Too late for pharmacies. Too late for solutions. As I helped Grandpa into the guest room, his quiet dignity clashed with his failing body. His independence was wearing thin. "I'm sorry," I whispered as he eased into bed. "Not your burden to carry, Lore," he murmured, patting my hand with a trembling palm. But I knew better. As I closed his door and faced the cold, neglected house, I understood clearly. It was my burden now, and I would turn it into something meaningful. By morning, sunlight poured through dusty blinds, casting a spotlight on the years of neglect embedded in my childhood home. Cobwebs clung to ceiling corners. Water stains marred the living room ceiling. The banister wobbled beneath my hand as I walked down the stairs. Physical signs of emotional patterns. Problems ignored, patched over, never solved. Grandpa Walter was already at the kitchen table, flipping through an old photo album. His coffee sat untouched. His finger traced a faded photo, my mother as a teenager, scowling beside her beaming younger brother, Uncle Mark. "History repeats," he said softly as I joined him. "Linda always resented Mark getting special treatment, and now she's doing the same thing with her kids." The album showed it all. My 5th birthday, Ethan, barely a toddler, tearing open my gifts while I sat in the background. My high school graduation, my parents flanking Ethan in every photo while I stood just off to the side, wearing my valedictorian sash. Last Christmas, Ethan. In the center, buried under expensive gifts. My sweater and bookstore gift card left unopened on the end table. I never wanted to see it, I admitted, flipping pages now tainted with betrayal. I kept telling myself they were protecting him, because he struggled more than I did. Grandpa closed the album. Protection becomes prison when it stops growth. Ethan never learned resilience. They never let him face consequences. My phone buzzed with a bank alert. My student loan payment was due in 30 days. That $23,000 should have covered nearly half of it. Now, it had paid for my parents' tropical getaway and whatever designer items Ethan was parading around in. "I should have moved that money years ago," I said, the familiar ache of regret settling on my shoulders. "Hindsight's useless without action," Grandpa replied. "What matters is what you do now." So I started searching the house, with fresh eyes, and what I found left no doubt about the enabling. Ethan's closet was filled with designer clothes, tags still on. His room was a tech showroom, new gaming console, expensive headphones, a high-end laptop. Meanwhile, Grandpa's prescriptions remained unfilled, and utility bills threatened disconnection. The landline rang sharply, cutting through the silence. It was Mrs. Sharma, the counselor from Ethan's last high school. "I'm calling because Ethan missed his weekly check-in again," she said with a professional but concerned tone. "It's required for his diploma equivalency program. This is his 3rd absence this month." I assured her I'd look into it and hung up, only to find Grandpa staring at a bank statement, his face pale. "They took my money too," he said, softly sliding the paper toward me. Last year, when my parents remodeled their kitchen, they'd called it a loan. But the statement showed a $30,000 withdrawal, nearly half of Grandpa's retirement savings. "Did they pay anything back?" I asked, though I already knew. He shook his head. "Linda said they'd send a payment every month, but there was always another emergency with Ethan. Eventually, I stopped asking. My fury cooled into something sharper, more dangerous. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a pattern, a deliberate system of exploitation that had drained every available resource to prop up Ethan's chaos. "Remember when Ethan wrecked Dad's car at 16? I asked, memories resurfacing. They used my college fund to replace it, said it was an investment in peace. Grandpa nodded solemnly. And your senior year, he added. They used your graduation money to send him to that wilderness therapy camp. The one he left after 2 days, I finished. Because Mom couldn't stand him being mad at her. His expression hardened. She was the same with Mark, Grandpa said softly. Couldn't stand his disappointment, so she gave him everything, fixed all his problems, until… He didn't need to finish. I already knew the end of that sentence. Uncle Mark died of an overdose at 23, the family tragedy no one dared speak of directly. The cautionary tale that should have become a turning point, not a pattern. By the time afternoon arrived, with still no sign of Ethan, Grandpa and I had completed a full financial autopsy of our family. It was worse than I imagined. In addition to my stolen savings and Grandpa's loan, we discovered my parents had refinanced the house twice, maxed out multiple credit cards, taken out payday loans with sky-high interest, all to fund Ethan's spiraling issues and to avoid facing the reality they'd built around him. We can't fix this for them, I said aloud, the truth hitting hard. Any money we give them now will vanish into the same black hole. Grandpa reached across the table, his hand rough but steady. Some lessons can only be learned through consequences. We were still sitting there when the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Logan Pierce, Ethan's old friend from middle school, shifted nervously on the porch. Mrs. Mitchell asked me to feed the fish while they're gone, he said awkwardly, clearly not expecting to see me. We don't have fish, I nearly replied, until it clicked. Logan was Ethan's dealer. Had been for years. This was his usual excuse. Ethan's not here, I said coldly, and he won't be buying anything from you ever again. The pretense dropped immediately. He owes me $800, Logan snapped. Your parents said they'd leave it for me. Suddenly, everything made sense. My parents had used the rest of my savings not just for their vacation, but to pay off Ethan's drug debts. Instead of helping him, they'd enabled him. Again. After warning Logan never to return, I shut the door. When I turned back, Grandpa looked older, worn, a man carrying decades of regret. I helped create this, he said quietly. I gave Linda everything after her mother died. Overcompensated. Never taught her responsibility, financial or emotional. He looked at me, eyes glistening but steady. But we can end this cycle, Lauren. Right now. In that moment, surrounded by dusty photo frames and the lingering smell of stale air, our path forward became clear. This wasn't just about recovering stolen money. It was about breaking a cycle of dysfunction before it claimed another generation. Ethan needed help, not more handouts. My parents needed boundaries, not excuses. Grandpa needed care. And I needed to stop surrendering to what was easy and start standing for what was right. Where do we start? I asked. By finding Ethan, Grandpa said, his posture straightening. Then we change everything. We began with digital tracking. Ethan's Instagram showed a post from the night before, a party at the old Jefferson house on Lakeview Drive. In the photos, he looked dazed, glassy-eyed, surrounded by strangers equally out of it. He wore brand new Jordans and a watch I recognized, straight, from a shopping channel my mom adored. Those shoes cost at least $300, Grandpa muttered. And the watch? Nearly $2,000, I added. He was walking around wearing my savings. We made a list of Ethan's usual hangouts: the skate park behind the rec center, the food court at Riverside Mall, that rundown train depot where teens partied, after grabbing breakfast for Grandpa and picking up his long-overdue prescriptions. We started searching. The skate park held only energy drink cans and teens who scattered when they saw us. A security guard at the mall recognized Ethan's photo but hadn't seen him in days. 3 coffee shops and 2 record stores later, we Ran into Adam Cooper, one of Ethan's old friends who'd somehow managed to keep himself together. "He's at Cameron Reed's house," Adam said hesitantly, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "His parents are in Europe for a month. They've been throwing parties nonstop." The Reeds lived in Oak Ridge Estates, a wealthy neighborhood with immaculate lawns and massive driveways. From the outside, Cameron's house looked picture-perfect. White colonial, flawless hedges, fancy cars parked neatly, but the recycling bin overflowing with empty liquor bottles hinted at what was really going on. No one answered the bell. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house told a very different story. Food containers scattered everywhere. Marijuana hung heavy in the air. Stale beer, crumpled clothes, chaos. In the sunken living room, 3 people were passed out on leather couches. Ethan wasn't there. We found him upstairs in a guest bathroom, hunched over the toilet. Cameron sat beside him, barely upright himself. "Lauren?" Ethan squinted at me, face pale and sweaty. "What are you doing here?" "Taking you home," I said, scanning the counter. Prescription bottles lined it. Oxycodone, Xanax, Adderall. None of them his. Cameron stood. "He's fine. Just a rough night." "He's coming with me," I said, ignoring him. My nurse instincts took over. Ethan's pupils were blown, breathing shallow, coordination barely functioning. He weakly protested as Grandpa and I helped him down the stairs, but he couldn't. "Stop us." The drive home was silent, except for Ethan groaning in the back seat. At home, I gave him water, ibuprofen, dry toast. He complained about the brightness and the noise, but didn't resist. After a shower and clean clothes, we sat at the kitchen table. "Where's my car?" Grandpa asked firmly. Ethan stared at his toast. "I think it's at Cameron's, or maybe Riverfront Park. I don't remember." "And my medication?" Grandpa asked again. "You were supposed to pick it up." Shrug. "I forgot." I slid the empty bank statement in front of him. "Do you know what this is?" His red eyes barely focused. "Mom said they wanted to help me." "I never agreed to give you $23,000, Ethan." "You don't understand," he muttered, his tone defensive. "I had debts. People were threatening me." "Because of your choices," I replied calmly, anger burning low but steady. "Choices that Mom and Dad keep enabling instead of fixing." "What? You mad I'm not perfect like you? That I don't follow the rules like everyone else?" "No," I said. "I'm mad that you're destroying yourself, and they're helping you do it. They spent my loan money to feed your addiction and go on vacation." "It's not a habit," he snapped. "I can stop whenever I want." For the first time, Grandpa spoke. "When's the last time you went 24 hours without something in your system?" Ethan looked down. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "You're killing yourself," Grandpa said softly. "Just like Mark did." Ethan flinched. "I'm not like him," he muttered. "I've got it under control." "Is that why you owe dealers money?" I asked. "Why you're failing your GED program? Why you've stolen from everyone who loves you?" My voice cracked. Despite all my training, all my control, I couldn't keep the emotion out. "This isn't control, Ethan. This is free fall." For one brief moment, his mask slipped. I saw fear. Real fear. "I don't know how to stop," he whispered. It was barely audible. Then, as quickly as it came, the wall slammed back into place. "Whatever. You've always thought you were better than me anyway." "I've never thought that," I said gently. "I just want you to be healthy. And happy." "By your definition," he shot back. "College, career, playing adult." "By the definition of not being constantly high, broke, and in danger," I said quietly. "I mean having real choices," I said firmly. "Not being led around by your addiction." Ethan shot up from his chair, the legs scraping harshly against the linoleum. "I'm not doing this intervention thing. You're not even my mom." "No," I replied, holding his gaze. Because if I were, I would have gotten you help years ago, instead of enabling you until it nearly killed you. He stormed out, slamming the back door so hard it rattled the window panes. I watched him through the kitchen glass as he paced. The backyard, kicking at dry leaves, muttering to himself, or maybe to the truth I'd just thrown at him. Grandpa Walter exhaled heavily beside me. He reminds me of Linda at that age. Couldn't tolerate being told anything she didn't want to hear. Do you think he'll run? I asked, already thinking through our options. Eventually, Grandpa said. But right now, he's got no money, no car, and he knows Cameron's parents come home tomorrow. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Ethan slunk back into the house, half defiant, half defeated. He raided the fridge, pulled out a string cheese and some stale crackers, then collapsed at the table. So what now? He mumbled, avoiding my eyes. You going to lock me in some rehab place? Tell Mom and Dad I'm the family failure? I studied him closely, really saw him. For maybe the first time in years, I didn't just see the addict or the screw-up. I saw glimpses of the boy he used to be. The one who built elaborate Lego cities. The one who cried when we found a bird with a broken wing. The one who used to draw comics about a superhero who could fix anything broken. You're not a disappointment, Ethan, I said gently. You're hurting. That's different. He peeled at the cracker wrapper, his defenses temporarily lowered, maybe by hunger, maybe by the crash from whatever substances were still in his system. It wasn't supposed to be your money, he admitted eventually. Mom said they'd pay it back before you even noticed. The same old excuse. A familiar pattern. Short-term solutions for long-term disasters. Always borrowing from tomorrow to survive today. And the other times? I asked softly. My graduation money? My college savings? Every bonus I ever sent them? He stared at the table. They always said it was temporary, that once Dad's business picked up or Mom got promoted or some investment matured. He trailed off, maybe hearing the hollowness in their excuses for the first time. Ethan, Grandpa said gently, do you want to keep living like this? The mask cracked. For just a second, the practiced defiance slipped, and what emerged was raw fear. I don't know how to live any other way, he whispered. That quiet admission, so vulnerable, so rare, opened something between us. It was the first true connection we'd had in years. Not responsible sister versus troubled brother. Just two people staring down the truth. But before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his shoulders tensed. I have to go, he said, retreating behind the mask. Just a couple hours. Something I need to take care of. Your dealer? I asked, catching the way his hands fidgeted. It's not what you think, he said quickly. Then explain, I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like what I think. His expression hardened. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're killing yourself, I said evenly. And I know Mom and Dad are helping you. Do it. Whatever. He stood, jaw clenched. I'm going out. You can't stop me. Technically, he was right. At 19, Ethan was a legal adult. I couldn't force him into treatment unless he posed an immediate danger to himself or others. And we weren't there yet. Actually, Grandpa said, his voice calm but firm, you're not going anywhere until you hand over my car keys, and the house keys too. Ethan's body stiffened. Or what? You'll call the cops on your own grandson? If I have to, Grandpa replied without hesitation. Theft is still theft, even from family. The tension thickened. 2 generations locked in a silent battle. Finally, Ethan broke eye contact. He dug into his pocket and tossed the keys on the table. Happy now? I'm still leaving. With no money? No transportation? To do what, exactly? I asked. He didn't answer. Stay, I offered more gently. Have dinner. Sleep in a real bed. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps, together. The word dinner seemed to hit him harder than any moral reasoning had. He hadn't eaten properly in days. One night. That was all he agreed to. Fine, he muttered. But I'm not promising anything. It wasn't a breakthrough. It was a truce. A fragile one. But as we stood in the kitchen making basic sandwiches from what little groceries I'd managed to buy that morning, I realized his presence gave us a chance. We couldn't just save Ethan. We needed to dismantle the system. That broke him. That enabled him. That left Grandpa neglected and my savings drained. This was the first step. Later, once Ethan had eaten and fallen into a heavy sleep, his body finally giving in to days of stress and withdrawal, Grandpa and I sat at the kitchen table again. It was nearly midnight. We laid everything out. Bank statements, property records, unopened bills, his medical notes. We need legal help, I said, flipping through the proof of financial abuse. This isn't just family drama. Anymore. It's criminal. Grandpa nodded gravely. The house is still in my name, he said. I never transferred it after your grandmother passed, though Linda's been pushing me for years. That stopped me cold. It was the first good news I'd heard in days. A strategy began to form in my mind. I pulled out my phone and checked the time difference. I'm calling Rachel. Rachel Levine, my college roommate turned corporate attorney, picked up, despite the hour. I gave her the rundown. Her lawyer voice kicked in instantly. Document everything, she said. Text messages, emails, bank transfers, anything proving they accessed your funds without permission. Same with your grandfather's accounts. Rachel's voice sharpened over the line. Lauren, get power of attorney for your grandfather immediately. If your parents catch wind that you're pushing back, they might try to declare him mentally unfit. As soon as we hung up, I opened a shared digital folder and began scanning every piece of relevant documentation using my phone. We took photos of everything. The empty fridge, the pile of unpaid bills, Grandpa's unfilled prescriptions, all of it. Evidence not just of financial exploitation, but of sheer neglect. The house is worth about $350,000, Grandpa Walter said, skimming over recent property assessments. If I sell it, I can pay off the mortgage, settle the outstanding bills, and still have enough for assisted living. Are you sure? I asked gently. I knew how deeply he valued his independence. His hands trembled as he organized the papers with quiet resolve. This house has become a prison, Lauren. I can't keep it up anymore, not with my condition. And your parents have used it as leverage for their bad decisions long enough. His tone was steady now, determined. It's time. We researched assisted living options near my apartment in Portland and found 3 facilities with immediate availability and excellent reviews. The idea of having Grandpa close, really close, after all these years eased a tightness in my chest I didn't realize I was carrying. What about Ethan? I asked. The hardest question of all. He needs treatment, Grandpa said firmly. Not another excuse, not another second chance. He was right. But getting Ethan into rehab wasn't that simple. At 19, we couldn't legally force him into treatment unless a judge ruled he was a danger to himself or others. Cooperation was our best chance, unless things got worse. I know a place, I said, pulling up the Riverstone Recovery Center's website. They specialize in dual diagnosis treatment, addiction and mental health. It's not punishment, it's real help. Your parents will never agree to it, Grandpa reminded me. They won't have to, I replied. My insurance will. Cover 60%. And the rest, we can pull from the house sale. Around 1 a.m., I called Aunt Susan, my dad's sister. She'd distanced herself from the family years ago after a series of financial betrayals. I wasn't sure she'd even answer. She did. Her surprise turned quickly into something else. Vindication. They did the same to me? She confirmed bitterly. They borrowed $122,000 to cover Ethan's private school tuition after his second expulsion, promised to repay it monthly. I never saw a cent. Her voice hardened. When I finally said no to another loan, Martin called me selfish and blocked my number. She offered to email documentation of it all, further evidence of the pattern. She also offered me her guest room, in case the confrontation we were planning turned volatile. "Have you thought about a restraining order?" she asked gently before hanging up. Linda can get unstable when she's challenged. The idea stuck with me long after the call ended. That night, I made up a makeshift bed on the couch, but I couldn't sleep. My mind ran through scenarios and counter moves like a chess game I couldn't afford to lose. By dawn, I had a full plan drafted in my journal. Secure Grandpa Walter's assets and medical care immediately. Document every instance of financial exploitation. Arrange new living situations for both Grandpa and Ethan. Establish firm, non-negotiable boundaries with my parents. Enforce consequences if those boundaries were crossed. By mid-morning, Rachel followed through. She emailed a package of legal documents, power of attorney forms, a healthcare proxy designation, and a property transfer agreement. Everything we needed to protect Grandpa's assets. We'd still need to get them notarized, but the framework was there. Ethan emerged from his room around noon, hollow-eyed but slightly more lucid than the day before. He picked at the breakfast I'd left out: toast, eggs, black coffee, still avoiding eye contact until the caffeine kicked in. "Were Mom and Dad really?" he started to ask, doubt clinging to his voice. I showed him their Instagram feed. Beachfront. Cocktails. Parasailing selfies. Spa day stories with hashtags like deserve, getaway, and best parents ever. He looked away. "Must be nice," he muttered. Something flickered in his eyes. "Using your money for their vacation while dumping me on you." That flicker, that moment of recognition, was everything. "It's a pattern," I told him quietly. "They enable your self-destruction, then leave someone else to clean it up. They're not helping you. And honestly, it's not even really about you." He blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" Grandpa answered this time. "It's about their need to believe they're good parents, that they're doing the right thing. Giving you money and freedom feels like love, but what you need is structure and accountability." Ethan sat back, processing. His walls hadn't fully dropped, but they'd thinned. "So what? You expect me to just magically get better? Quit everything? Cold turkey?" "We want you to get real help," I said, making it clear. "Professional treatment, not punishment. Actual healing." I explained Riverstone Recovery's approach, how they treated the root causes, not just the surface behaviors. For the first time, Ethan didn't shut down. He listened, really listened, and even asked specific questions about the process. "I'd have to give up my phone?" he asked, the hesitation exposing both his attachment to connectivity and his fear of isolation. "Just for the first 2 weeks," I said. "Then you'll have supervised access as you progress." He fidgeted with his empty coffee cup. "I can't afford something like that." "My insurance can help," I replied, "and Grandpa's selling the house anyway." That last part made Ethan's head snap up. "Wait, what? Mom and Dad are going to lose it." "It's my house," Grandpa Walter said calmly, "and it's my choice." The room quieted. Ethan absorbed the shift, the reality of power changing hands. For a moment, instead of panicking, he looked relieved. "You'd really pay for rehab?" he asked quietly. "After everything?" That question cut deep. It told me just how effectively our parents had pitted us against each other, how impossible it was, in his mind, that I'd still want to help him after what he'd done. "You're my brother," I said simply. "I care more about you getting better than getting my money back." Something broke in his face. The mask he always wore, the indifference, the attitude, it cracked just enough for me to see the boy he once was. "I don't know if I can do it," he whispered. "You don't have to decide today," Grandpa said, his tone soft but steady. "But take a look at where your life is heading. 5 years from now. Is this the road you want to stay on?" The question lingered. Meanwhile, we kept preparing. I contacted a real estate agent to evaluate the house the next day. Rachel connected us with a notary to handle Grandpa's legal documents. Ethan alternated between quiet interest and nervous pacing, checking his phone even though it stayed stubbornly silent. By evening, we had a plan. Secure Grandpa's legal and medical independence, begin the house sale, present rehab. As Ethan's choice, recovery or full financial detachment. Present the changes to our parents as facts, not options. "They're going to fight this," Ethan said as we reviewed the timeline. "Especially Mom." "They can fight all they want," Grandpa replied, with more fire than I expected. "They just can't stop it." I scheduled a video call with Rachel for the next morning to finalize legal defenses. That night, for the first time in days, something different replaced our panic. Purpose. A fragile sense of direction. "Do you think this'll actually work?" Ethan asked as I set up Grandpa's evening meds. "It has to," I answered, "because we can't live like this anymore." He nodded slowly. Maybe the first time in years we were truly on the same page. 3 generations, united not by blind loyalty, but by shared commitment to change. That night, despite the lumpy couch, I slept more soundly. My exhaustion finally outran my anxiety. But just before dawn, the crash of shattering glass jolted me awake. Disoriented, I leapt up. Upstairs, Ethan's room was empty, his window wide open. His bedside lamp lay shattered on the floor, probably knocked over as he climbed out. Grandpa appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. "He's gone." A quick sweep confirmed it. Ethan had taken Grandpa's spare car keys, the bottles of prescription medication, and about $80 from my purse. "Call the police," Grandpa said immediately, but I hesitated. "If he gets arrested for theft, it could ruin everything," I reasoned. My nurse instincts kicked in. "Let me try to find him first." I called Ethan, again and again, straight to voicemail. Texts went unread, panic rose. I called Adam, Cameron, and 3 more people. No one had seen him since yesterday. By 8 a.m., dread outweighed caution. I reported Grandpa's car as stolen, but carefully explained it was taken by a family member who might be in medical distress. The officer took the report but didn't seem to prioritize it, chalked it up to a family situation. "Call the hospitals," Grandpa whispered beside me. The fear in his voice made my stomach twist. I started dialing. 3 hospitals gave nothing, but the 4th, St. Luke's Regional Medical Center, confirmed a John Doe matching Ethan's description. Had been brought in around 4:17 a.m. The drive to St. Luke's felt endless. My grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled. Grandpa sat beside me in heavy silence, his face frozen somewhere between panic and grim expectation. The emergency department buzzed with chaos, beeping monitors, harried nurses, moans from patients beyond paper curtains. A charge nurse led us. To Bay 3 Ethan was there, unconscious, intubated, hooked to machines that monitored every breath, every beat. His face was gray and still. He looked more like a shell than a person. Dr. Mehta met us with calm, direct professionalism. "Polysubstance. Overdose," he said. "Opioids, benzodiazepines, alcohol." He was found unconscious in a park restroom. Joggers called it in. Paramedics had given him Narcan at the scene. It helped, but not enough. He was intubated on arrival. My clinical mind understood every word. But emotionally, I was unraveling. Ethan had taken Grandpa's medications, his heart meds, his anxiety pills, even the pain relievers prescribed for Parkinson's, mixed them with whatever else he'd been using. "What's the prognosis?" I managed, falling into nurse mode just to stay upright. "Cautiously optimistic," Dr. Mehta said. "His liver function is concerning, but he's young, otherwise healthy. We're transferring him to ICU for monitoring and ventilator support." After providing Ethan's insurance information and confirming my status as his next of kin, I helped Grandpa Walter into one of the stiff vinyl chairs in the waiting room. The fluorescent lights washed out his already pale complexion, his skin ashen and his hands shaking worse than usual. "This isn't your fault," I said gently, watching his tremor increase. "Did you take your morning meds?" He shook his head. Ethan took them all. One crisis layered on top of another. I located the hospital pharmacy, explained the situation to a compassionate pharmacist, and managed to get emergency refills of Grandpa's essential medications. His Parkinson's symptoms would temporarily worsen from the missed doses, but preventing a cardiac episode was more urgent. While we waited for Ethan's transfer to the ICU, I tried calling my parents again. Still no answer. Voicemails were full. My final message was simple and sharp. "Ethan is in the ICU at St. Luke's after an overdose. He may not survive. Call me immediately." Hours passed without a single word. Grandpa dozed restlessly in his chair. I stayed at Ethan's side, watching machines do what his body could not, regulate each breath, each beat, the fragile rhythm between life and loss. By mid-afternoon, even through the fog of emotion, my body demanded fuel. I wandered down to the cafeteria, bought a flavorless sandwich and a cup of weak coffee. As I sat, numb, my phone finally rang. "Lauren?" Mom's voice carried the unmistakable slur of day drinking. In the background, I could hear music. Laughter, resort life in full swing. "What's this dramatic message about Ethan?" I explained everything. Calmly, directly, brutally. The overdose, the stolen meds, the ventilator, the fact that her son might not survive the day. "We'll catch the next flight," she said, her voice sobering. "Should be home by tomorrow evening." "Tomorrow evening?" I repeated, stunned. "He might not make it to tomorrow evening." "There aren't any immediate flights," she replied defensively. "We're doing our best." "Like you did when you emptied my savings? When you left Grandpa with no food or medication? When you enabled Ethan's addiction instead of getting him treatment?" My voice rose, fury surging through years of repression. "We'll discuss that when we get home," she snapped. "Just like I've always been doing. While you and Dad pretend it'll all magically fix itself." She hung up. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. The sandwich sat untouched. My appetite was long gone. When I returned to the ICU, a woman waited outside Ethan's room. Professional, calm, holding a clipboard. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Melissa Jennings, hospital social work team. I'd like to speak with you about your brother." Her steady tone cracked the shell I'd built around myself. In her quiet office, surrounded by inspirational posters and brochures for support groups, I finally allowed myself to cry. For Ethan, for Grandpa, for the family I'd spent a lifetime trying to believe in. "This has gone on for years," I told her between sobs. "My parents enable his addiction, clean up messes, pretend everything's fine, and disappear when things actually require work. And now this." Melissa listened closely. Her pen moved quickly across her notes as I recounted the pattern. Ethan's decline, my parents' financial manipulation, Grandpa's neglect, my stolen savings. "Connecticut has strong elder abuse laws," she said finally. "And your brother clearly meets the threshold for involuntary medical treatment. My parents will push back," I warned. "They'll say he just made a mistake, that he needs support, not strangers interfering." "Their permission isn't needed," she replied. "His condition legally qualifies under imminent danger criteria, and I'm required to report suspected elder exploitation." For the first time in days, I felt a sliver of relief. A system beyond our broken family was finally stepping in. Accountability might arrive, not from guilt or shame, but through law and ethics. That evening, Ethan stabilized enough for the doctors to remove the ventilator. He remained unconscious, but could now breathe on his own. But as one crisis faded, another worsened. Grandpa's condition deteriorated. The stress, missed meds, poor nutrition, it had all caught up. His tremors worsened. He seemed confused, fatigued, drifting in and out. The hospital admitted him for observation. There weren't many beds available, but the team recognized the urgency, not just medical, but emotional, social, and logistical. I became a one-woman operation. Switching rooms, asking questions, making decisions, keeping both of them afloat with nothing but vending machine snacks and pure willpower. Close to midnight, my father finally called. "This is excessive, Lauren," he began, skipping any greeting. "Ethan's had issues before. He's always pulled through without hospitals and social workers. He's never overdosed on multiple substances before," I said, my voice low and steady. "And barely surviving isn't the same as getting better." "Your mother's very upset about what you've said," he added coldly. "We've always done our best for both of you," my father insisted, sidestepping everything I'd just said. "By stealing my savings?" I shot back. "By leaving Grandpa without food or medication? By enabling Ethan instead of helping him?" "We borrowed your savings," he corrected sharply. "We'll pay it back once we've paid off this vacation." And there it was. The entire problem distilled in one absurd statement. Their tropical getaway took priority over returning the money they stole. "Dad, listen carefully," I said, my voice flat and calm. "Ethan nearly died today. Grandpa is now hospitalized because of stress and neglect. Hospital social services have been notified. Elder abuse is being formally reported. Everything is changing, with or without your permission." He started, sputtering, but I no longer heard the words. I laid it out clean and simple. Ethan would enter inpatient treatment as soon as he was stable. Grandpa would be moved to assisted living near me. Their access to any family financial accounts was permanently revoked. "You don't have the right to make those decisions," he shouted. "I already have," I replied, then ended the call. Hours later, Ethan regained consciousness, confused, disoriented, startled by the medical equipment and sterile surroundings. I explained everything, gently but honestly. His condition, what had happened, why he was here. "Am I in trouble?" he whispered, voice raw from the breathing tube. "With the law? No. With your health and future? Yes." I didn't look. Away. "Ethan, you almost died." His lips trembled. "I didn't mean to," he choked. I just wanted it all to stop. For a little while." "I know," I said softly, understanding more than I wanted to. "But it has to." Stop, for good. For the first time in our adult lives, Ethan didn't push back. He didn't deflect or blame. Maybe being this close to the edge stripped away the excuses. Maybe withdrawal had cleared just enough mental fog. He nodded slowly. Tears slid silently down his cheeks. "So, what now?" "Treatment," I answered without hesitation. "Real treatment, not a quick fix or another cover-up." "Mom and Dad won't let me." "They don't get to decide anymore," I said, voice steady. "This is between you and living." His fingers reached for mine, hesitantly, on top of the blanket. The first time he'd initiated physical contact in years. A small gesture, but it spoke volumes, acceptance, agreement. The beginning of surrender to something better. By morning, both Ethan and Grandpa Walter had stabilized. Their journeys ahead were still uncertain, still uphill, but no longer spiraling downward. I worked with Melissa Jennings to finalize Ethan's intake process, confirm insurance coverage, and secure Grandpa's placement. I was running on fumes. When my phone buzzed again, I braced for another fight. But instead, it was Whitney Harris, my supervisor back in Portland, responding to my leave request. "Take all the time you need," she said kindly. "Family medical emergencies qualify under protected leave. Your position will be here when you're ready." Her compassion, the contrast between her response and my parents' cruelty, brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "Family crises are never easy," she added. "But don't forget your oxygen mask, Lauren. You can't help anyone if you fall apart." Her words pierced something inside me. I'd been operating on adrenaline. For nearly 48 hours, managing medical emergencies, emotional implosions, and decades of dysfunction. My mind was still racing, but my body was exhausted beyond comprehension. In Ethan's room, I found him sitting up slightly, watching soft sunlight filter through the blinds. "I remember," he said quietly, as I checked his IV lines. "Taking Grandpa's pills, driving to Riverside Park, thinking it would just make everything stop hurting." His voice cracked. "I didn't want to die." "But you almost did," I replied gently. "And that's why things have to change." Tears ran freely down his face. "I'm scared, Lore." The nickname, Lore, something he hadn't used since childhood, made my carefully held composure finally crack. Still in yesterday's wrinkled clothes sitting beside his bed, I whispered back, "Me too, but we'll figure it out." And we would. In that sterile ICU room, surrounded by wires, beeping machines, and uncertainty, we built the fragile foundation of something new. Not a repeat of our parents' codependence, not blind loyalty, but something healthier, witnessing, supporting, not fixing or controlling. That distinction changed everything. The sharp click of designer heels echoed across the hospital linoleum, announcing her arrival before she came into view. Linda Mitchell, my mother, swept into the ICU waiting room in a bright floral sundress and straw hat, tanned shoulders gleaming, resort scent still clinging to her skin. She looked absurd in the sterile space of crisis. Martin trailed behind her, eyes tired, but clothes just as out of place. Golf polo and khaki shorts like he'd wandered in from the country club. "Where is he?" she asked, eyes scanning for Ethan. "Where is he?" she demanded without so much as a hello, like Ethan's location was somehow proof of my failure. "Room 427, I replied, keeping my tone calm. "The doctor's with him now." "And you let this happen," she snapped, waving her hand dismissively. "Left in charge for 3 days, and now he's in the hospital?" Her accusation, framing her abandonment as my negligence, sparked a rage I had fought to contain for days. Before I could respond, the elevator dinged behind us. Grandpa Walter stepped out slowly, using the hospital-issued walker. He clutched, his discharge papers in one trembling hand, pale but upright. "Linda," he said flatly, "quite a homecoming." My mother turned and visibly recoiled. Her eyes scanned his condition. The hospital gown, the walker, the IV band still around his wrist. "Daddy, what happened? Why are you dressed like that?" "Missed my medications," he said evenly. "The ones Ethan took before his overdose." "This is getting out of hand," Martin cut in. "Everyone's overreacting. Ethan made a mistake." "A mistake that almost killed him," I said, my voice steady. "And that exposed years of enabling that's tearing this family apart." A hospital security guard approached. Officer Jenkins, his nameplate read, drawn by the raised voices. "Everything all right here, folks?" In an instant, my mother's face shifted, her public persona slipping neatly into place. "Just a concerned family," she said sweetly. "Our son is recovering upstairs." "Maybe continue the conversation somewhere private," Officer Jenkins suggested, eyeing us carefully. We relocated to the hospital chapel. Quiet, neutral ground, where stained glass and silence bore witness to our unraveling family. Inside, I stood protectively beside Grandpa Walter, noting how hard he leaned on the walker now, how his tremors had worsened. "You stole my savings," I said, once the chapel door shut behind us. $23,000 I saved for my student loans. "We borrowed it," my mother replied reflexively. "It was an emergency." "Your Cancun vacation was an emergency?" I asked. She flushed, her tan suddenly looking out of place under the chapel lights. "Ethan needed help with some financial issues, and we deserved a break after everything we've been through." "While leaving Grandpa with no food, no medication?" I continued. "While expecting me to manage the mess you caused?" "He could have called us if there was a problem," Martin said dismissively. "I did call," Grandpa interjected. 6 times. No answer. My mother's expression stiffened. Walls rising. "This ambush is inappropriate. What Ethan needs now is family support, not accusations." "What Ethan needs," I said firmly, "is professional treatment for addiction, not another round of enabling that nearly killed him yesterday." "He's not addicted," she insisted, shaking her head. "He's just sensitive, like your Uncle Mark was. He needs support, not strangers labeling him." There it was. Her brother, who died of an overdose at 23, used, not as a warning but as an excuse. Not a lesson, but a license to keep repeating the same mistakes. History, in her mind, wasn't something to learn from. It was a justification to ignore reality. Before I could respond, a voice interrupted us at the chapel door. "Mrs. Mitchell?" Dr. Mehta said gently. "Your son is asking for you," Dr. Mehta said gently. My mother took the opportunity as an escape hatch, hurrying toward Ethan's room with Martin trailing behind her. In their wake, Grandpa Walter sank onto a nearby bench, utterly drained. His posture slumped, face ashen with exhaustion. "She'll never see it," he murmured. "Linda rewrites reality instead of facing it." Despite his fatigue, the insight struck with perfect clarity. My mother had spent decades constructing a narrative that protected her from accountability. Words wouldn't reach her. Only consequences ever could. Upstairs, we found Ethan sitting upright in his hospital bed, quiet, but alert. My parents stood on either side of him like protective bookends. My mother stroking his hair like he was still a boy, not a 19-year-old who had nearly died from voluntary substance abuse. "The doctor says you can come home tomorrow," she said, smiling. "We'll take care of everything." But Ethan's gaze found mine across the room. Something passed between us, something wordless but real. Then, to my surprise, he gently shook his head. "I'm not coming home," he said. My mother's hand froze mid-stroke. "What?" "I'm going to rehab," Ethan continued, his voice growing steadier. "The Riverstone program Lauren found. I already talked to the admissions team." "That's not necessary," Martin said, waving it off. "You made a mistake. You learned from it. Let's move forward." "I'm an addict, Dad," Ethan interrupted. The admission visibly shook him. "I have been for years. Pills, mostly. Whatever I could get when those ran out." He twisted the blanket in his hands. "I need real help, not another round of pretending everything's fine." My mother's face cycled rapidly. Disbelief, anger, then a forced recalibration. "If you really feel that way, we'll find a more suitable option. A private facility. Something—" "Riverstone has a bed open tomorrow," Ethan said, cutting her off. "They accept our insurance. Lauren's listed as my guarantor." "We're your parents," Linda snapped. "We make these decisions." "I'm 19, Ethan said quietly. "Legally, I decide. And I've decided." The silence that followed was seismic. Ethan, always the one positioned as incapable, had taken full agency, right in the moment they were trying to take it from him. Grandpa Walter used the pause to step in. "Since we're discussing decisions, I'm selling the house." "What?" Martin's voice cracked. You can't. It's my house, Grandpa said evenly, and I've already listed it with Robertson Realty. The agent comes next. Weak. Where will you live? Linda demanded, switching tactics. You can't manage alone. Parkview Assisted Living, he answered without hesitation. In Portland, near Lauren. I've submitted the application already. This is absurd, Martin blustered. You're both being manipulated. Lauren's poisoned you because she's jealous Ethan gets more attention. The accusation, once capable of wounding me, now only reinforced everything I'd come to accept about their dysfunction. Actually, a voice interrupted, sharp and clear. Whitney Harris stepped forward. My nursing supervisor. She'd entered unnoticed during the standoff. I've been documenting what I've observed, she said, holding up her phone, including accusations against a healthcare worker advocating for 2 vulnerable family members. Linda's smile strained, the charm flickering back on. I'm sorry. Who are you? Whitney Harris, she said crisply, pediatric nursing supervisor at Portland Children's Hospital. I came to support my colleague through this crisis. What I've witnessed raises serious concerns about elder neglect and enabling behavior. This is a private family matter, Martin tried. Not when it involves elder abuse or medical neglect, Whitney replied, professional and unwavering. As healthcare workers, we're mandatory reporters, and we will be reporting. The introduction of outside accountability fractured my parents' fragile united front. I saw it in the way Linda's practiced smile faltered, in the way Martin's shoulders slumped beneath the weight of something he could no longer control. Ethan seized the moment. I'm going to Riverstone tomorrow, he said clearly. I've already signed the paperwork. And I'm selling the house, Grandpa Walter reaffirmed. These decisions are final. My mother's composure finally shattered. Years of control, of orchestration, came undone. You can't do this, she said, tears brimming, voice rising. You're twisting everything, taking advantage while we were gone. Ethan needs us, not strangers. Daddy, you can't possibly manage on your own anymore. Actually, I interrupted, calm and prepared. That's why he signed over power of attorney and named me as his healthcare proxy. I pulled the notarized documents from my bag. Executed legally, yesterday. We'll contest this, Martin snapped. You've manipulated an old man into signing away his life. He's confused. I'm 76, Grandpa said sharply. Not confused. My neurologist has confirmed my cognitive function. I made these decisions. Lauren didn't make them for me. Linda pivoted again, abandoning rage for weaponized sorrow. After everything we've done for this family. This is how you repay us? My mother sobbed. Turning against your own parents? You stole my savings, I replied evenly. You neglected your father's basic needs. You enabled Ethan's addiction until it nearly killed him. Those aren't accusations, I added. They're documented facts. We borrowed that money, my father insisted, grasping for control. We intended to repay it. With what? Grandpa Walter asked bluntly. You've refinanced. You're home twice, maxed out your credit cards, emptied your retirement funds. Where exactly would repayment come from? Their house of cards, built on borrowed money, false promises, and wishful thinking, collapsed under the weight of truth. Parents exchanged glances. Beneath their expressions, panic, recognition, and fear. For the first time, they realized their decades-long system of emotional manipulation had failed. What do you want? My mother finally asked. Behind her tears, I could see the calculations. Is this revenge? Is she taking Ethan and Grandpa away to punish us? I want accountability, I answered clearly. I want Ethan to receive real treatment instead of being enabled. I want Grandpa to be properly cared for instead of forgotten. And I want my savings returned so I can pay off my student loans. We don't have the money, my father admitted quietly. It's gone. Then you'll create a repayment plan, I said, with interest, legally documented. Or what? My mother asked. The edge of desperation crept into her voice. Or I'll file official reports, I said calmly. Financial exploitation, elder neglect. The documentation exists. The witnesses exist. The choice is yours. The hospital room fell into heavy silence. It was the sound of a system breaking, of years of dysfunction crashing against real consequences. My parents stood stripped of their usual tricks. No deflection, no denial, just reality. Then Ethan spoke. I need help, he said quietly. Real help, not another cover-up or a temporary patch. He looked at them directly. I'm going to Riverstone tomorrow, with or without your support. His words, his first real boundary in years, landed like a thunderclap. I watched my mother's expression shift. For once, it wasn't calculation. Behind her eyes, it was clarity. You nearly died, she whispered. Her voice trembled, not with guilt, but with fear. Maybe for the first time, she truly saw her son. Yes, Ethan replied, and I will die if nothing changes. That unguarded admission stripped everything else away. In that moment, her maternal instinct finally aligned with reality. Her narrative that we were just a perfect family navigating minor challenges couldn't hold against Ethan's near death. What do we do? She asked. The question wasn't directed at me. She asked him. For the first time, she asked her son what he needed instead of telling him what he should be. Let me get help, Ethan answered. Real help. And start repairing. What's broken, including my relationship with Lauren. And with Grandpa. Sensing the shift, Martin attempted to pull back control. We'll talk about all this later, once emotions settle. For now? No, Grandpa Walter said, his voice cutting through the room. There will be no more discussions. Everyone turned to him. Decisions have been made, he continued. Ethan enters treatment tomorrow. I'm selling the house. I'm moving to assisted living. Lauren has full legal authority to make sure all of this happens. Then his gaze locked on my parents with unwavering strength. Your only decision now, he said, is whether you'll accept these changes with grace or fight them in vain. The words didn't come from anger, but from exhausted clarity. The family patriarch they had overlooked, undermined, and exploited was standing firm, and for the first time, they were the ones without power. They couldn't deny it anymore. My mother's stiff posture slowly eased into something that resembled resignation. My father's objections faded into silence, tight-lipped and uncomfortable, and then Officer Martinez arrived. The hospital had requested official documentation for suspected elder abuse, and his presence turned vague consequences into immediate reality. He opened his notebook, his pen scratching across the pages as he took statements that could lead to real, legal action. It was no longer theoretical. We'll cooperate, my father finally said. The words fell from his mouth like loose gravel, spoken not from remorse but survival. Whatever repayment plan you think is fair. And Ethan's treatment? I asked, pressing while the leverage still existed. My mother looked at Ethan, really looked, and nodded. If that's what he wants. It is, Ethan confirmed. Quietly. This wasn't some cinematic transformation. There was no sweeping reconciliation, no tearful family hug. That kind of resolution belongs to movies, not to families like ours. But we had something else. Boundaries. Consequences. And the first shaky steps toward accountability. Not healing. Not yet. But the preconditions for healing. As Officer Martinez finalized his report and my parents exited to process their loss of control, Ethan caught my eye from across the hospital room. Thank you, he said softly, for not giving up on me. Never, I said. That single word held weight, because I hadn't enabled him like our parents had, but I also hadn't abandoned him. I'd walked the narrow middle path, where love meets accountability, and that, I believed, was our only chance for something real to grow. 3 days ago, I found Grandpa Walter alone in a dark kitchen, eating a dry sandwich and reading a cruel note taped to the refrigerator. Now, everything was different, not because of a miracle, not because of some dramatic outburst, but because of steady, painful choices. Because someone finally said no. Because someone refused to pretend anymore. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Ethan's recovery would be long and uneven. My parents might try to regain control the moment the pressure lifted. Grandpa's health would keep declining, even with better care. But for the first time in our family's history, we weren't living in denial. We were facing truth, together. And that fragile shift, that quiet honesty, was something to build on. That night, Grandpa slept peacefully in his hospital bed. Ethan sat quietly, preparing himself for the treatment program that would begin tomorrow, and I, finally, rested. Not because the burden was gone, but because I'd stopped carrying it alone. Sometimes, standing firm creates the space for others to finally stand on their own. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Because sometimes, the hardest part of love is not enabling someone's self-destruction. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more honest conversations about family, healing, and hard choices. Remember, healing is rarely linear, but with courage and boundaries, it's always possible. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I wish you strength on your own path toward healthier relationships.